Did you hear the news? They've arrested Jesus. The Savior of Israel has been arrested. He came to us proclaiming news so wild, we scarcely could believe it. This oppressive existence could be overthrown, and he would lead it, a revolution for God's people. Liberty, a return to justice for all of us, including me. I've been forever looked down upon. I've always been mocked just because I was born in Nazareth, the place where they say no good person is, but I know I'm good. I know there's good in me. And Jesus came to set us free. This Jesus, my Jesus, he caught my heart. He instilled a new vision in me. It's an old hope. It's a hope of salvation that we had almost forgotten. It was long buried under our fear that God had left us behind. But Jesus came. He stood among us. He looked us in the eyes. And he assured us, God has not forgotten you. He spoke of hope, real hope. And hope in me rose up again until the day they arrested him. But wait. Pilate stands ready to let him go. Every Passover, Pilate releases a prisoner for us. It's a tradition. It's a sliver of mercy from an evil empire. Now, this year, they've said he's going to offer to release Jesus. We have to get there. Maybe hope isn't lost yet. Maybe. Just maybe. This was a test of God to see if we would hold on to the hope. And now, there's a second chance. Come with me. We need to hurry before it's too late, before hope slips away. Come with me and we will convince Pilate to give us back our Jesus. Look, there he is. The one we've awaited for so long. He's standing there in the chains. Next to him's another prisoner. It's the illusion of choice. As if we would want anyone other than Jesus. Shh. Pilate speaking. He's calling for the vote. Who do you want me to set free today? This is the moment, my friends. Jesus must be set free. Yell with me. Cast your vote. Give us Barabbas. Let Pilate keep this other man from Nazareth, the one they also called Jesus. But don't be fooled. He was 2 grades ahead of me in school. And he always had this weird talk about peace and love. But we know better. I know he's a fool. No. Give us our warrior. Give us Jesus Barabbas. Give us the one who will do whatever it takes for us to return to be a power in this world. Give us the one who will purge these foreigners from our borders. Give us the one who will lead us in liberty or death. Death. Death to the Nazarite. Death to the one from Nazareth. Crucify him. Let the words ring out with me, friends. Crucify him. He is an embarrassment to the Davidic line he claims. I've heard of his strange ministry to the Romans, to the Canaanites. He aids and he abets these foreigners, our enemies. He loves the enemy. It's disgusting. My Jesus declares the truth. If you will not fight with us, you stand against us. Jesus of Nazareth, he's the enemy. Go and die, Jesus, the so-called King of the Jews. Look at where you've ended. Look at where your dreams have brought you to. Don't you know? The Romans, the Canaanites, all the ones you've included in your love, they're our enemies. They're your enemies. If you were a good Jew. Go then, Jesus of Nazareth. Go and die for your enemies. No one will mourn you. No one except this miniature army of women. No one will remember you a generation from now. History is written by victors, by the strong, those who can lead us past the handicaps of empathy and love so that we can do what needs doing. No one's going to remember you, Jesus of Nazareth. History doesn't record the names of the meek and the docile. Look at you now upon the cross. Look at your agony. Look at your defeat. You yourself, you now admit it's over as you're crying out that your God has abandoned you. I've seen enough. It's time for me to go follow my Jesus, Barabbas. That he lives, that my Jesus lives, is powerful proof that the God who has abandoned you has not abandoned me. He has not abandoned the rest of his people. Until you came and stirred Pilate up to offer us Jesus or Jesus as an imperial joke. My Barabbas was as good as dead. And with him would have died my hope. But you have taken his place. You are a blessing from the God who has abandoned you. In you, my hope has been resurrected. I'm off now with Barabbas to go sharpen our swords and plan our wars. Let others say violence begets violence. They say this will never work. But this time will be different. My Jesus, Jesus Barabbas, is different. God used you to save him after all. My Jesus is different. The God who has abandoned you saved him through you. The time has come on this Good Friday for the proverbial king of the ageless dynasty of fruitless religion and violent politics to look over his wedding. He surveys the guests that have streamed into Jerusalem for the upcoming wedding. The wedding of the mob to the incestuous son, Jesus Barabbas. It's the revolutionary child, the offspring of Satan, the one who works in death and destruction. The proverbial king surveys the still unwitting guests who have come to Holy Week. And he sees a guest who has chosen not to put on the clothing of the wedding feast. This man, Jesus of Nazareth, is an embarrassment to the grand ceremony to happen this week. He stands out against the glory of this upcoming marriage, and the king will not suffer the sight of this unwelcome man. The man will either get dressed as he should, or he'll get out. The king, dressed in religiosity, King Caiaphas, comes to the ill-dressed wedding guest and seeks to win him over with kindness. My friend, how is it that you're here at the grand wedding, and yet you haven't become dressed as we are? Jesus gives no answer. The wedding guest remains silent. The high priest, Caiaphas, says, "Have you no answer?" Continued silence. The proverbial king's face turns red with anger, and he points to Jesus angrily. And he says, "I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us, are you the Messiah, the Son of God?" Jesus says, "You said it." And the king tears his clothing, and he declares, "He's blasphemed." And the king and his council, they assailed Jesus, spitting upon him, slapping him, and saying, "Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who has struck you? Put on the clothing of God that we demand you wear at this wedding. You have come ill-dressed to our wedding, dressed in humility and weakness and commonality. Put on the clothing that befits the violent wedding of religion and power. Prophesy to us. Wear the garments of this wedding." And when they had their fun and they had finished their ridicule, the king had the ill-dressed guest bound and sent away into outer darkness of alienation, exclusion. Again, the proverbial king came to the ill-dressed guest. This time, the king had replaced the clothes that he tore, the clothes of religiosity. And now he dressed in political power. Pilate came and sat upon his judgment seat, the judgment seat being the elevated platform from which the earthly kings would render their fearful and deadly declarations of judgment. Governor Pilate, the proverbial king, he stands before Jesus and he says, "You aren't dressed as the wedding demands. What do you have to say for yourself?" And again, the guest remained silent. The king decreed again, the judgment upon you is condemnation. You are to be sent out into the alienation of outer darkness. You'll be sent out into the greatest alienation we have, death. You'll be taken to the place of crucifixion, where the crucified ones are ostracized from the walls of the city, and where they and their loved ones constantly weep and gnash their teeth. Meanwhile, the wedding ceremony of Jerusalem continued as the proverbial king married off his son Barabbas to the eager bride. The bride, the mob, they shouted their dark vows. Their vows of marriage were vows of death. Crucify him! Their vows of marriage were vows of fidelity. We have no king but Caesar. The groom, Barabbas, smiled silently as he was released to go embrace his bride. In place of uniting with never-ending wedding rings of love, the groom and his bride joined their swords into the never-ending circle of violence. As the bride and groom kissed, the proverbial king, the newlywed couple, and all the guests of the grand wedding got drunk on their wine and power. As the grand wedding continued, another wedding picked up on this Good Friday. It was a wedding that was ill-attended. But the king didn't rage like the proverbial king. For his worth, his value didn't come from how many attended the wedding. He was not concerned with appearances of grandeur. The second wedding took place under the watchful eye of another king, as pictured in this famous painting of Jesus' view from the cross. The second king looked on from the elevated place of his judgment seat, raised upon the cross of alienation and death. And as he surveyed the meager guests of his wedding, he saw no one that should be kicked out. Unlike the proverbial king's wrath at those who didn't attend the wedding, this king observed the abandonment of his closest friends, his groomsmen. He noted their absence at his wedding ceremony, and he set himself to find them after all the things were done, to renew them in his love. At this wedding, the vows from the bride of humanity they were venom and acts of infidelity. The vows of the divine groom, who was one and the same as the king himself. They were the immense sound of his silence from his judgment seat. It was the sound of his refusal to declare, "I will separate myself from you," by following the demands of these people for a show of power. His vows were the silent refusal to vocalize judgment. His refusal to respond in kind to his bride's harshness. His marriage vow at this wedding was of quiet mercy. So that Hebrews tells us that Jesus' judgment seat is a mercy seat. And in the exchange of instruments by which they would mark the marriage, rather than a ring, the bride offered him instruments of pain and suffering and rejection. Jesus accepted these instruments with understanding that this was all his bride had on hand to offer. And he allowed his bride to give him all of her own sense of alienation until he too cried out. The bride offered him a reprieve as he was in agony upon her cross. The bride offered him a bit of medicinal wine to ease his suffering. And with the wine, the groom's acknowledgement that I cannot fully endure what you are putting me through. To take the wine would be to say that the groom could not love his bride to the depths of her own pain, her own loneliness. To take something to ease the groom's pain would be for the groom to say, I can't withstand the outer darkness of pain and suffering where you are. But Jesus, the groom, he refused to be numbed from the one he loved. He would anchor the proof of his presence in the place of the broken and lonely. He would accept what she had chosen to give him as the symbol of their marriage. And in exchange, Jesus placed upon the finger of the bride's accusation, the bride's mocking, the bride's harsh anger, he placed upon her finger the unending ring of his eternal love. The groom king surveyed this pitiful but cosmic wedding from his judgment seat. He gazed upon the guests at his wedding. He gazed upon his bride. He saw no one properly dressed for a wedding. He saw his abandonment by his groomsmen, and he condemned no one. He judged no one. Because his is a work. It is a wedding of salvation, of deliverance. And to that end, he would stay sober, without respite, dedicated to stay alongside his bride, even if it killed him. And so he breathed his last, settling eternally into our worst. And we, the awakening bride, we join this groom king in the love that he's brought to settle in with each other on this Good Friday into our worst. We take this particular night to refuse the call, to shirk from, to avoid the agony of staying in suffering. On this night, we turn down the wine of minimization, of denial towards pain. We take Good Friday night to immerse ourselves into the experience of the groom king who loved us so dearly. We take Good Friday night to embrace the unpleasant experience fully, but uncondemningly, merciful, loving ourselves, loving each other, and loving God.